Welcome to the May 2016 episode of This Week in Germany, the podcast about German culture, society, and politics.
Coming up, from so-called ghost stations in the GDR to World War II bunkers. Have you ever thought what Berlin might look like from the underground?
TTIP, the trade deal between the US and the EU, has come under fire after some of the unfinished documents were leaked.
And thousands of people around the world rent out their apartment to holidaymakers on Airbnb. But in Berlin, it's banned. Why? We'll take a look.
All that and more coming up on this episode of This Week in Germany. And if you want to interact with us, just go to thisweekingermany.de. You'll find all our social media links on there. So, Rob, let's kick off episode 105, and this episode was meant to come out last week, but I was ill, but I'm feeling better now.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it is good. So, Rob, what's happened in your life in the past month since our previous episode came out?
Kind of Germany-related. I went to Vienna, Austria, and while it's not Germany anymore, they do speak German there. So
well, that's not at all Germany-related.
Yeah, I got to go to another country and speak German.
Well, I guess that is an advantage of learning the German language. Anything else?
Also, I went to Berlin and made a half American, half German, official half German, half American.
Okay, you made your baby into a
Germerican.
Is that what they call them these days? Well, speaking of Americans in Berlin, imagine if your parents came to Germany's capital and they wanted somewhere to stay. What would they do you think?
They would probably want to stay in a hotel or something like that. But I mean, those things are freaking expensive in Berlin. I mean, you can get cheap ones, but kind of get what you pay for a lot.
Well, something that's been popular with a lot of people coming to Berlin has been Airbnb. Now, that's a website where you can rent a whole apartment as if it were a hotel room. And often the price is very similar of that of a hotel room as well, but you get an entire apartment. And the thing is, Berlin's government, so the local government for the city of Berlin, has banned Airbnb listings for all of the properties inside Berlin. So that means if your parents wanted to rent an Airbnb in Berlin, they wouldn't be able to.
Why did they make this law to begin with? Are these private rental services having such a large effect on those wanting to live in Berlin?
Well, the authorities say yes, because rents in Berlin went up by 56% between 2009 and 2014, but they're still low compared to places like London or Madrid or Paris. And so what they think is that, if you create more room for people to settle in here as residents, then that will prevent rental prices from going through the roof. Now, Berlin is an extremely popular tourist destination, 30 million overnight stays last year, and they say that these private online bookings, this is according to the research company GBI, quoted in the Guardian newspaper, these online bookings represent over 6 million overnight stays. Now, if you think of the Airbnb market, normally what it is that someone has bought an apartment and then they've moved in, let's say, with their new husband or wife, and then that apartment that they've left, they then rent out on Airbnb rather than simply selling it to someone who wants to live in Berlin. And so what they say is by banning this 6 million overnight stays from private online providers, these people will simply go to hotels, they'll have a place to stay, but they won't be pushing up the rental prices for people who want to live here.
Do you think with laws like this, if since this law has passed, and if they make similar laws in other cities, then is it going to end these type of businesses? And let's say that the businesses are located outside of Germany. What is to stop them from continuing to operate? Is there a way to enforce the measures of the rules?
Well, two important things here. First, I have a feeling this will have zero impact on Airbnb as a company because they're extremely popular around the world and most cities embrace Airbnb. Also remember that in other cities where the housing prices are already extremely high, this would have a negligible effect on bringing those housing prices down, and instead local governments need to concentrate on building as much as possible in order to stabilize prices. Also, specifically in terms of enforcing the rules, it's not aimed at Airbnb as a company. It's not banning them from listing, but it's banning the people themselves from putting the listings online. So Airbnb as a company isn't banned from Berlin, but rather people are just not allowed to list their apartments there. Those are the people who could get landed with a fine as high as 100,000 euros if they get caught.
I can kind of see why you might want to have a rule like this, because I'm always hearing about the housing shortage in Berlin. But if, let's say that you had an apartment and you happen to have a extra room, then what would be the harm in being able to rent that out to someone, do you think?
Well, the government says that there is no harm in that. So if you have a room that you want to rent out, that's fine. So you can still use Airbnb to rent out a single room in an apartment which you live in. You can also use services like couch surfing to host people for free. That's absolutely no problem. But you cannot rent out your entire apartment. So private single room, yes. Entire apartment, no. So while these measures may help to keep apartment prices low, it's by no means a permanent fix. And even worse, it infringes on the liberty of homeowners to do what they want with the property that they own, that they've paid for.
And now for the current news in brief. Just before U.S. President Barack Obama came to Germany this past month, tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets of Hanover. They were showing their frustrations over the transatlantic trade deal called TTIP. The average German citizen seems to be against TTIP, according to a new survey by pollster DMAP. It showed that about 70% did not want the EU-US trade pact to go through. Just under 80% believed strongly that TTIP would hurt consumer protections. Even more were worried about the lack of public transparency in negotiations. More people than ever are against TTIP in Germany, which is due to Greenpeace releasing leaked documents. They are showing that there is a much more favorable trade conditions for the United States rather than Europe. Near the end of April, President Barack Obama came to Hanover to speak about the importance of bilateral cooperation. He spoke about dealing with ISIS and called for the EU to reject moves towards nationalism. That day, President Obama also met up with Chancellor Merkel and they toured Hanover's industrial trade fair. Obama is nearing the end of his second term as president, meaning this is likely his last trip to Germany as head of state.
On behalf of the American people, I want to thank Angela for being a champion of our alliance. And on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you for your commitment. I truly believe you've shown us the leadership of steady hands. How do you call it? The Merkel Rate?
Erich Honecker was one of the former East German leaders for the Communist Party during the GDR. His wife Margot was also deeply involved with politics while her husband was in office, and she served as the education minister. Margot Honecker died early in May from cancer. She spent the last 20 years of her life living in Chile and defended her communist ideas until the end, saying, "In the East, we never knew social incertitude, need, or misery. Now, monster money has taken the place of human relations." To help the growth of the electric car markets, Germany will be granting subsidies to purchasers. Those that buy a new pure electric car will get 4,000 euros, and those buying a hybrid plug-in car will get 3,000 euros. The government is budgeting 600 million euros in total for this project, and is expected to run until the year 2019. In a surprise move, the head of Germany's intelligence agency, the BND, has been fired from his position. Gerhard Schindler was removed from his job only 2 years before he was set to retire. While details are not yet known, it suggested his position became untenable when it emerged that the BND had spied on Germany's neighbors at the request of America's NSA. The founder of Pegida, the anti-Islam movement in Germany, Lutz Bachmann, has been found guilty by a Dresden court of racial incitement and has been fined almost 10,000 euros. The speech in question was from a Facebook post Bachmann made where he referred to refugees as cattle, scum, and trash. The press spokesperson for the disastrous Berlin airport that is now already 5 years late from its planned opening time has been fired for being too honest in an interview. Daniel Abu told a magazine that no one who wasn't crazy could even guarantee that the airport would ever open. I missed the last episode, but I'm back again for another Destination Germany. And as most of our listeners know, Destination Germany is a feature where we go out and tell you some of the really interesting places you can visit here in Germany. It could be a museum, or it could be somewhere nice out in nature, it could be a monument, or it could be a festival. There's so many great places to visit in Germany that it's difficult to tell you about only one each episode.
And while you were exploring other parts of Europe last episode, Rob, as you mentioned earlier, Vienna, which has nothing to do with Germany, so we're not even going to talk about it. I spoke to Wouter Bernhardt, who is Walrus from the podcast Walrus and the Bear, and that podcast is all about Berlin, so what better thing to talk to him about than a cool place in Berlin. We talked about Kreuzberg and the area around it and inside it, places like Treptower Park, and you can go there and visit a Soviet war memorial where there's this really strange statue of a Soviet soldier clutching a baby and a sword while stamping on a swastika. So if you like dramatic monuments, that is the place to go.
Well, I actually just got back from Berlin last week, where I was telling you about earlier that I went to the U.S. Embassy and made my child a half German, half American, or I like to say a Germerican.
American, yeah. But you're not going to be talking about the U.S. Embassy, right? Because I think most people can't just go and visit it.
No, you can't. But I do want to talk about Berlin. And this episode's destination is going to be back in Berlin. And we're going to the Berlin Underworld. Ooh.
There's a reason for that ghost noise. It does sound pretty scary and ominous, this underworld. Is it like a hellhole kind of place, or is it an underworld, or is it just underground?
It's just underground. Okay, so yeah, the Berlin Underworld, or Berliner Unterwelten, is a series of passageways, tunnels, and underground rooms that have been made under the city, but have recently been excavated and are now being shown to the public.
So you're trying to say there's a city underneath the city with passageways and rooms and stuff. Is this subterranean Berlin something that's just recently been uncovered?
Yes and no. It's been known about for a while, but it's still being excavated today, so new history is being discovered all the time. And to tell you a little more about it, I met one of the professionals that is devoted to the Berlin Underworld.
My name is Michael Fedorowicz. I'm working in the Berlin Underworld Association as a tourist guide in the Flag Tower, and I'm a historian by profession, and I'm a book author, and I'm supporting films as an advisor, and so on and so on, dealing with matters World War II.
So he sounds like he's a proper expert in his field, so a dedicated historian of Germany.
Yeah, he did seem really devoted to what lies underneath Berlin and is going to figure out exactly what's down there and then be able to share with everyone that's interested in learning about Berlin's underground depths. Michel went on to tell us that how they were able to start exploring the depths of Germany's capital city.
The association was founded in December 1997, and we had some access to some underground sites, and we were keen to explore it, because the book market and all these things, there was nothing. You had no chance to collect some information. Only you have to go to the archives, and we had access to the city administration, so we had the license to go underground, because sometimes it's very difficult and dangerous. If you visit the sewers, you're endangered by gas sometimes, So you must be prepared to go to the underground, and you must have the permission from the city administration.
So this is pretty recent that they've started exploring the underground tunnels of the city. So I'd love to learn what's been going on down there. What underground world has been created there?
They do host a tour, which I'll tell you about a little bit later. But what I found really interesting was one of their newest finds, and it's their current special exhibition, which just opened a few weeks ago. It's entitled The Myth of Germania.
You know that the project Germania was a Nazi project to change Berlin into the capital of the world. And they were planning very, very huge buildings. And so we try to find the places where we can find remains from this project. For instance, I visited Norway last year, and I visited the Oslo Fjord, and I put my feet on a little granite island called Store Roholm, and I found stones already prepared to be shipped to Germany to build this Germania project. It was very, very interesting, to be in Norway and to see Berlin in the future.
So there was a huge plan by the Nazis to build a new world capital in Germany if they won the war. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, this exhibition actually has the model that was built to show what Berlin might have become if the Third Reich's plans had actually come to be. And it was due to Michiel and his other people and his team that discovered what's under Berlin. And they were the ones that found these plans that might have turned Berlin into the mega capital city of the world.
So what can you tell our listeners about being a visitor to Berlin Underworld? What can they expect if they go along on one of these tours?
Well, they're still doing research and excavation, so it's not like a open museum right now. You have to take a tour. And on that tour, you learn a lot about the history of the Second World War and about this underground area, which might be something new that you never knew was going on underneath Germany. And the tours take about 2 hours or so, and they take you through old subways, hidden bunkers, and entire buildings that were created under the city.
Wow. So could you book a tour in advance?
Right now, you can't. You actually have to go where the entrance is, and that's at a pavilion that's located right next to the southern entrance of the Gesundbrunnen underground station, which is about... Gesundbrunnen.
Very good.
Okay, yeah. Which is located about 10 minutes away by public transit from the main train station. Luckily, they do offer daily tours in English, and a lot of the tour guides have some wonderful reviews, both for excellence and historical knowledge, as well as being very entertaining at the same time.
So do try and grab one of the places on those tours if you can while you're in Berlin. So yeah, if this underground tour of Germany's capital, as well as the plans for a Germany or Berlin which never came to be, if that sounds interesting to you, check out Underworld Tours, Berlin Underworld, at berliner-unterwelten.de, or just search for Berlin Underworld on Google. And that brings us to the end of yet another episode of This Week in Germany.
And as you probably know by now, we are doing monthly episodes rather than weekly episodes, but we still have new content all the time if you go and visit us on Facebook, or you check out our Twitter, or if you go to our website, which is thisweekingermany.de. Also, if you subscribe to us on iTunes, make sure that you like us and rate us 5 stars.
That's right. That will help us to find new listeners, which gives us lots of encouragement to make loads of cool new content for you. So yeah, you can also go onto our website, click iTunes in the sidebar, and rate us that way as well. That's thisweekingermany.de. All of our links for everything are there. This Week in Germany is produced by Daniel Winter and is written and presented by myself and Rob Bishop.
Thank you all for listening. We'll be back in just a few weeks with the next episode of This Week in Germany.